So I will start with Feldenkrais lesson, actually. And I just coming back here, I realized again, and that was a little bit the project in Van Abbe, to realize how the art spaces are very unaccommodated for our bodies. So it's a bit cold here, acoustic, horrifying, and so forth. So let's try all to do our best. But I'm self already freezing. Are you okay now? Yes, cool. We start, okay? So I'm Yael. I'm a bit nervous being here. First, this is the only education I ever did for art. And I know you think it's a dreadful school, but it's not as bad when you finish it. Okay, please sit. You are already sitting. Put your 2 foot on the floor. You hear me now? Very nice. Try to see, so we have our skeleton. In our skeleton, everything is connected. We're looking at the organization. It's one organization. It doesn't matter how big is the part we move or how important we think it is. It's equally important in the brain, in our skeleton. We have the, sorry, I'm getting on. We have the hands, we have the shoulder, we have the breastbone, we have the ribs, we have the clavicle, the spine, which connect our head to the ribs, to the pelvis. The very bottom of our pelvis is our sitting bone. Most of us don't sit on our sitting bone. We either sit like you're doing behind it, either sit in front of it, but we don't sit on it. So first of all, try to find your sitting bone. It is these 2 very sharp things there. So go a little bit in front of them. And the best is actually for all of you to sit on the very edge of this chair. Yeah. So go a bit in front, drop your belly. Well, go in front. Take your belly down and go behind the sitting bone. And just do this few times. You will feel as if you climb on them and go back down. Climb on them. They are the highest, actually. And go down. And then just see if you can find the place where it is your sitting bone. And we're going to do a short demonstration or lesson around turning. So first, turn in your own rhythm, in your own way. First, close your eyes, actually. All of you. Cool. And then just turn to the right as if you want to see something. Few times, very slow. We're doing everything very slow. Few times you turn to the right and back. And just notice how do you do it, what move first, and how much of you is doing the movement. Yes. And notice, yeah, how far you go. So I'm not encouraging you to go far. I'm just asking you what is the place that you feel you reach your limit, that you recognize any kind of effort. And we are not welcoming effort in this practice because effort is also translated as sound for the brain. So just see what is your limit and come to the center. And now please keep your head in front and only move your body to the right. Your head is fixing to my direction and only move, no, as if you want to turn your body, not your legs stay in the same place. Sorry, I was not clear. So keep as if you want to look what you did, but the eyes are fixed in front. So do this few times. And notice what is moving. Are your shoulders moving? Are your knee moving? And you remember the sitting bone. What is going there? So you turn and you come back with your body. You don't stay there. You turn and you come back. And then try now, notice when you're turning your left, your left shoulder will go in front and your right shoulder will go back. So do this more extensively. So you're turning, but you're really aware of the role of your shoulders. So your left shoulder go in front and your right shoulder go back. So it's not up and down, it's front and back. Yes. Enjoy. And rest a moment. You can drop it, you can rest whatever it means for your body to rest for a second. And now, please just take your left shoulder in front and notice what is going on with your right shoulder when your left shoulder is going in front. Does it have the tendency to go back? Just notice it. So we believe in this practice that attention already makes changes. So when a mother looks at a baby with loving and curious eyes, something has happened to the baby. All research shows that babies develop better when there is a loving gaze toward the baby. So imagine, just look at this way toward yourself. Just what is going in your right shoulder when your left shoulder is going in front. And now again, leave the head in front and turn your body to the left and use the shoulders. So take the left shoulder in front and the right shoulder back. And remember to close your eyes. You don't have to look at me. And now when you do it, notice what is happening in your knees. And you notice what is happening in your sitting bone. You might feel that on the left side you sit in front of the sitting bone and that the weight is going more to the left sitting bone, or not. And now when you take your left knee forward, you elongate it. Imagine you want to shorten your right knee. So the left knee go ahead of you in front and the right knee go shortening. But your foot stay in the same position. So it means that something will happen in your hip joint. Yeah. The left knee go in front and the right go back. Yeah? I'm turning to the right, you're right. You're very well. Yes, so you were on the left, huh? Shit, sorry. Okay, so I will be with you on the left. Keep on. So just rest a moment. And now try again to turn as if you want to look at something on the left, but before you're doing it, just imagine that your right shoulder will go in front and your left shoulder will go back. That your right knee will go also in front and your left knee will go back. So first just create an image in your mind before you're doing this movement. And imagine what will happen in your spine. And then just few times, turn your head and your body as if you want to go to look at the left with all these ingredients. So you're right, to integrate the maximum of yourself into this movement. So it is not a separated movement only from the neck. And then leave the head in the left, fix it there, and move the body in front and back to the left. And just imagine, so look, the eyes are just a part of your body like any other part of your body. We are seeing with our eyes, but it's a limb. So just first imagine the size of your eyes, which is a little bit actually the size of a ping pong ball. So and the eyes are rolling in a socket. So now just imagine you want to look, you don't have to open the eyes for it, you want to look to the left and feel really how the eyes are rolling in its socket. And bring it back to the center every time. And again, you don't have to overdo it to the left, just until you feel, you sense sort of effort, and then you take it back to the center. And now take the eyes a few times to the right. And then as if you brush the air in the horizontal to the right and to the left in one line. And try to see if you can avoid jumping, so see if you can make it a small, smooth movement. And when every time you feel it's enough, just rest. Because I have no idea what is your own limits, and I ask you not to reach limits. So a request to take your own responsibility. And come to the center and rest a moment. And now again, please turn. First, you can now look or don't look, it's up to you. Turn to the left and use the most of your body to help you with this turn. And see how you're doing it now, if there's any different in the way you're doing it now. So help yourself with the shoulders, with the knees, and now a few times turn to the right, because I think few of you already did the right because you were mirroring me, my mistake. And when you do to the right, notice how your left shoulder go in front and your right shoulder go back. How your left knee is going in front and your right knee is going back. And what is the relation between your head and your spine? When do you feel you are corresponding to the rotation in the spine, and where do you feel that the neck keep ahead alone, the head rolling on the spine? And now do a few times to the right and to the left, but do that the head is turning in the opposite direction to your body. So the body turned to the left and the head is turning to the right. The body turned to the right and the head is turning to the left. And use your sitting bone. The eyes looking to the right and the head is turning to the left. It might be in the beginning a bit confusing, but try to see if you do it small and slow, how you can coordinate it between this opposition of direction. And come to the center. And rest a moment. And then just again, turn your whole body, and you know that the whole now is more than the eyes and more than the head. So you turn all of it to the left and all of it to the right. And see how is it that you're doing it. And compare it to how you did it in the very first beginning of the lesson. So allow the knees to move. There is something in our education that we think, oh, it's not fair if we help with the knee. It is more than fair to work collaboratively with the body. It is unfair to ask some part to take all the work. So see, when is it your hand, eyes who move? When is it that your shoulder moves, your knee, your pelvis? And drop your stomach. Very nice, thank you. So come to sit a moment. It was against all odds because the microphone went on and off, on and off, on and off. But this is a small demonstration in hopefully that you could sit a little bit better in my way of looking what is better. And now we go up there. A daily practice, a reading that loves, a physical act. One is always a plural. I'm going to be your last teacher, not because I will be the greatest teacher you may ever encounter, but because for me, you learn how to learn. When you learn how to learn, you will realize that there are no teachers, that there are only people learning and people learning how to facilitate learning. This is a quotation from Moshe Feldenkrais from 75. Everything, and now it's me, my voice. Everything departs from the and returns to the body. The body is as much my medium as it is my method. The body as a registrant of time, as a vessel of collective and singular memory, as an entity that occupies and traverses literal, cultural, and political geographies. In the genesis and conclusion alike, the body and all that it houses, a private biography and an equally finite, unique voice, must necessarily rely on the encounter with others. One is always a plural. I have made it a daily practice to closely examine the meeting points. One could say the axis, the connection, between different sites of knowledge. That is to say, what the right foot is trying to announce to the left hand, the connection between seemingly distant entity, voices, places, histories. I look to facilitate a relay of communication between these localized expressions to create condition and structure that allow for conversation to rebound and flow, but that also nurture introspections and a redefined ability to listen acutely. Learning from Athens. In my invitation to Documenta and my first visit in Athens, I asked to visit different locations in the city. 3 of them made a strong impact on me and became a fundament for my work and research. During my visit, my first visit in Keramikos Cemetery, do I say it correct? Keramikos Cemetery, which is what you see above, a complex graveyard dating back to about 1200 before Christ. It was striking to note how peacefully and organically this site is integrated in the cityscape of Athens and in the Mediterranean nature. For example, the presence of olive trees, which are typical for this area. Associated with agriculture, olive seems to have coexisted with humanity going back to early Bronze Age. The old stone of the grave blends effectively in the nature of the city and create a peaceful area in the metropolis. It reminds me of how I often experience nature in Israel. The ruins of Palestinian villages that are woven into Mediterranean nature have been turned into a pastoral image. So this is from where I come from. And just to trace, if you go in the countryside and you notice olive trees, cactus, and other trees, usually it means that there was a settlement there. So here you can see the olive and the cactus and the almonds. The ruins of Palestinian villages that are woven into Mediterranean nature have been turned into a pastoral image, evoking a sentiment, neglecting a reading of the history by most citizens. The effectiveness of the image and how such an image is instrumentalized as a cultural heritage act as an opposite force against the document. The document have turned into a monument, into a site of nature, a beauty, a sentiment. I sense an uncanny state of longing for such a corrupted image, realizing that such an image carries a gravity, point where the notion of home is calling me. The project is to unweave such an image, touching the complexity that it bears and the effect that shelter such an image. So what you see up here is Suba. It's a Palestinian village. I will soon mention it. And that's where I grew up, actually. So where I grew up, it's in Kibbutz Suba, which is downhill. And you can see how beautiful it is. And now it's became a park, the Palestinian village, to walk around with signs. So I just want to interweave it with part of my scripts for my performances. So this is small parts of the script. This is a script from, oh, I have the wrong page, sorry. From 2010, so it's a bit dated, from the performance I did, Learning to Imitate in Absentia. In the landscape where I grew up, homes have turned to stone, villages have become landscape. Tzfat, Tzfat. Tveria, Tveria, Bisan, Bet She'an, Anasra, Natzerat, Jaffa, Yafo, Ramle, Ramle, El-Katz, Yerushalayim, Be'er El-Sheba, Be'er Sheva, Suba, Tzuba. I grew up in Kibbutz Suba, downhill from the beautiful ruins of an old Arab village, Suba. We called it the Arab Tzuba, not fully realize what that meant. We loved walking there as kids. It was a beautiful place with beautiful view. This was for us nature. Later I understood that what we had been told about the history of these ruins was not the whole story. Suba had been a Palestinian village that was attacked by the Palmach army on July 13, 1948. 602 Palestinians were expelled and a Zionist settlement, Kibbutz Suba, was established. I grew up somewhere between these two places, Suba and Tzuba. The second location was the Epigraphic Museum. I come back to Athens, to my research, where stones of different size and shapes were ordered. This is from a kibbutz, just to see how you can find traces of villages. And this is the Epigraphic Museum, where stones of different size and shapes are ordered, lying heavily on wooden shelves like books. This stone library is the largest collection of inscriptions ranging from the 8th century before Christ to the late Roman period, mostly in Greek, with a small number of Latin and Hebrew funerary inscriptions. Most of the inscriptions are carved on stone or marble. The museum is a silent oasis in the center of Athens, mainly empty of visitors. The very few visitors that enter the museum are asked at the reception if they are mistaken with the Archaeological Museum, which is just the next door. This silence is absorbed and radiated by the stones. Stone as such are portraits of silence, the silence witnesses. Ancient Greek inscriptions were used for economic and administrative record keeping. So the Greek use it, in Palestine and other countries for the taxation more. The engraved language changed with the inscription of gravestones. It indicates the moment when for the first time language was engaged in substituting, describing the subject, the dead person. The loss and absence of the subject forced language to perform differently. In the Epigraphic Museum, the weight of the text turned physically. Text enfolded and engraved into stones. I can show again the images. The surface of the stone delineates information, but the very material of the stone and the landscape from which it was originally sourced is an legible history, embedded in the contours and compacted sediment of the stone, inaccessibly to its reader. The stone contains secrets that resist erosion, that cannot reveal themselves. The third location I visited in Athens was the Archaeological Museum. In the room depicted Roman emperor and empress with perfect proportion. I was affected by a tall, broken sculpture of the empress Julia Aguilia Severa. And by the description on its label that talks about the damage of the sculpture as dementio memora, condemnation of memory, a form of dishonor passed by Roman Senate of those who brought discredit to the Roman state. This bronze sculpture is compressed flat. Its face is defaced. What is speculated as affirmation of not to be remembered. This defacing of the image creates a new image, a modern expressive image, a female call, a victim call, the image voice, the unspoken. Then I would like to quote from the titles when you go to the museum. X23321, portrait of a statue of Empress Julia Aquila Severa, bronze, found at Sparta. Laconia, the face has marked contusion. The body of the statue is particularly compressed. The fact that makes its appearance odd on the whole. The head is heavily damaged, especially in the area of the nose, the forehead and the upper cranium. In spite of the condition of the face, the individual features are discernible. Tiny arched brows, big eyes with heavy upper eyelids, small fleshy mouth. The almost straight hair, rendered by incision, is parted in the center. The only preserved hand is the right one, you can see here, is the right one, which is stretched out. And the upper surface of the hair and the cranium holes are preserved from the nail, which attach the core of the exterior part. The portraits show extensive damage attributed to dementio memora, condemnation of the memory, involving the destruction of an image and the erasing of the name of the condemned person from public monuments. The museum artifact featured in the presentation, each resonant of the ossifying influence of time, a physical entity that have found themselves just as much dislocated as they are recontextualized. This is not the only truth of the artifact, but the historical figure that they seek to represent. This touches upon a prominent theme in my practice, object of diaspora. Another character central to the presentation of the installation in the Amsterdam were two death masks of Elsa Lasker-Scheller. I go reverse. Here she is. Elsa Lasker-Scheller, a German Jewish poetess and an artist, who was displaced during the early to 20th mid-century, eventually dying in a financial ruin and emotional turmoil in Jerusalem. Her literature, this is the second one, her literature and letters document a decline, a fracture in identity, in belonging. This wound belonged not only to Lasker-Scheller, but ran the length of an entire continent following the Second World. And this is a quotation now from Elsa Lasker-Scheller. I imagined a Jerusalem existence differently. I am so deeply disappointed. The land stayed the same, unseen land, the creation, but I am sinking within myself, and I am going to die here of sadness. And my child is forever going to rest all alone in the cemetery in Berlin. One does not know how everything is. I only know that life goes hand in hand with death. And wanting to think logically is just so illogical. I am so deeply disappointed. In 1934, Elsa Lasker-Scheller fled Berlin to Palestine and finally settled in Jerusalem. Like many other migrants, she did not easily adjust to the Levant, to the Mediterranean. Lasker-Scheller had been an acclaimed poet before the Second World, but in Jerusalem she lived from a charity of friends who knew her from her more prosperous days in Berlin. In 1927, she had lost her son, whom she mourned in her poetry. We read about her eccentric behavior, her madness and loneliness. we read about a displaced figure, a stray book, migrating within a Zionist project, a body absorbed by the pain and the madness of past and present. Alongside Julia Aguila Severa and Elsa Lesker-Schuller, the narrative of two other similarly marginalized women are vocalized in a parallel presentation in Kassel in the Documenta. The work in... no, this is not relevant, sorry. Yeah, okay. So, okay. The work in Kassel is shown in the new gallery, a site that dedicates the research around the Gurtlit estate and the collection of the new gallery. Since its discovery in late 2013, so the Gurtlit estate, it's a huge collection of floated art that they discovered quite recently. And there was a whole negotiation, we'll have the right to show it, and a lot of work came back to the owner, but it's a very, very interesting story. I don't have the time to unveil it, but how they discover it. The estate has been heading in the new Germany, comprising of a selection of floated objects gathered by the notorious art collector of the Third Reich, Hilbrand Gurlitt. Attempting to question the historical narrative of Gurlitt estate, as well as different intersecting stories and personalities surrounding its prevalence, I became especially interested in the work of Cornelia Gurtlit. She was born in 1819 and she lived till 1919. Hildenbach's sister. In various respects, I will show after her work, in various respects, Cornelia is archetypal of many female artists of her generation. A talented expressionistic painter, her work was never exposed to a wider public and for a long time remained sealed in the Gurtlit estate. Cornelia Gurtlit committed suicide at the age of 29 when she became familiar with her. She went to help soldiers and she fell into heavy depression seeing all the wounded. I mean, she came from a very protected house. And at that time, she also started to have community with a Jewish community, which was very poor in Latvia. And there, at the age of 29, she committed suicide. Most of her work were sealed in the collection, so it's actually only lately that she's revealed to the public. Alongside the figure, I have to struggle with this sound, the figure of Cornelia Gurtlit, the chronicle of another female personality who remained unconsidered by the canonical narrative is interwoven into performance script, namely the Jewish-German writer Rachel Verhagen. This is her. Verhagen hosted one of the most prominent salons in Europe during the late 18th and early 19th century and became emblematic for emancipation of both the Jewish and the female voice. Although her salon was outspoken at the time, Verhagen's fate remains tragically due to her strenuous effort to escape life as a Jewish outcast, heavily discriminated in the 18th and 19th century in Germany. Jewish people were most deprived of citizen rights at the time. Jewish women in particular had little access to social life. Rachel's salon allowed for a reversal. Her society, the society would enter into the Jewish woman's own room, into her cosmos. Rachel's awareness of the female exclusion was remarkably acute. A Shurim act, quotation, one is not free if one must represent something in the bourgeois society, a spouse, a wife of a civil servant, etc. Rachel's salons also had their own distinction style, which could describe as a psychological one. The salons were about learning to listen and talk in a language of visitors, a sort of modesty, an innocent, a neutral way of accepting and transmitting other voices. Quotation, everything comes to my ear. I speak to all and all speak to me. Every class. When I come to die, you maybe think she knew everything because she entered into all, because she never was or pretended to be. anything in herself. She only loved thought and make thoughts connected and harmonious. What is very interesting in her writing, so she didn't write books, but she had a long writing, and it was also her way to navigate in space and to announce herself, that she was suffering from extreme inferiority complex. So the writing, she talked about her thick fingers, about her chin, which is too low. So it's like she had a total, very different image than how people imagine her. But she managed somehow to emancipate, but she always had to run away at the end because the right of women, and especially Jewish women, had very little right. And Hannah Arendt wrote a very beautiful, her PhD was on her. She wrote a beautiful book about her, so I really recommend it. It's like incredibly moving. Okay. Edsel Esser Schuller, Julia Guille-Sivira, we're almost there, Cornelia Gottlieb, Rachel Verhagen, despite the largely distinct threads of experience that characterize these four women's life, it is apparent that each figure possessed a certain quality of knowledge, artistically, politically, spirituality, that either remain hidden throughout their lifetime or was alternately shown. It is not time that render this woman's insight neglected, but equally and perhaps more relevantly, the socio-political orchestration of knowledge hierarchies is pivotal, in that through studying such hierarchies, it became apparent that particular bodies and embodiments are granted a greater legitimacy and visibility as vessel of knowledge. Okay, I need to breathe. That's. In recent years, I began to integrate the Feldenkrais Method as a device for research, conversation, and knowledge production. In particular, in the beginning, it emerged in my practice as a means of preparing for performances, developing, okay, no, okay. I would like actually to do a turn, and because I use Feldenkrais a lot, you saw now a small exercise, but also in writing. So in Feldenkrais, in this specific, in the script for my performance in Kassel, I don't perform anymore, but I will talk about it later. But when I came to Kassel, Adam Schmizinski, which was a curator, showed me this painting, which was very interesting, because he asked me, what is it that's written there? And he also know how eager I am and how kind of greedy I am to go into library and to read and to find things. And what's written here is Rachmaninos. Rachmaninos is pitifulness. And I took this actually as a starting point for my performances. I look at it almost as a mapping, but also if you look at the hand, it's very much remind me the hand of Eguilia Sivira, of the woman that in the sculpture, the smash sculpture. I went to visit the person who actually discovered the collection, and it was very interesting to talk to him. But that's something maybe later. But I would like to show some of the work of Cornelia Gottlieb and the script that I developed, because I was really, after reading all this material, I tell you, I was really kind of almost a crisis. I had no idea how to start, like what do I do with all of this? And then I thought, I will analyze with my knowledge of Feldenkrais the body position. And what does it mean socially or mentally? So you can see there's a lot of work in sitting. So I would like to read part of the script, just to see how is, or maybe connect the two things. Yeah. So what I did, I went from position to position. We are two performers. I performed, and the other woman who worked with me, shared the floor, and later Taisha, they were reading and kind of animating me. During the performance, I can show after images. I show images from her work, different images. I move in different way. I do the positions, but also there's other 8 ladies who carry very heavy glasses in order to create sort of space, but also, we can also talk later about my fascination with glass, but okay. So now we are hanging. Hanging. Imagine this hanging as a position of standing, as the opposite of standing. It does not mean falling. You have a control here. You would rather fall than stand. Contract your legs around the rope. Use the inner muscles of your thigh. Tighten them firmly and let your torso pull the rest of your body down. Feel how the weight pushes downward to your head. Your blood vessels swell. Your face gets red. Your head endures your weight. This hanging has nothing to do with flying. It is about endurance and consciousness. Feel how your body desires to push the head out. Imagine you are this woman. So I now read this script when I'm hanging in a rope. It's just too complex for me to show now the image because I'm afraid something will go wrong. It happened on a winter day on the 14th of December. You felt she was coming. After all these months, standing in the long lines for hours, coursing, the moment came and an incredible power in you rang out. I will manage, it will be okay. At 7 months, she would arrive. There was no ambulance close by. Your husband borrowed a car. You are lying on the back seat, bleeding. A mix of extreme anxiety and happiness dazed you. In your thought, you are alone, and the red fluid beneath you turned into a thick carpet. It flew you across all borders. The car stopped, the window opened, eyes studied you. You heard male voices going back and forth. You knew precisely what the discussion was about, but your body ordered you to immerse and forget. You surrounded. Feeling is a movement. Surrender is a slow motion. Feeling is a position. Surrender is horizontal. You were the carpet, sinking, falling sediment by sediment, deeper than ever you knew, breathless. And so time passed. The report said the delay took around 40 minutes. You were bleeding all this time. Your baby came out. She was dead. You had always knew that you could not protect your child, but at least you could give her life. This was your one absolute conviction. But now, sucked into your pain with that words that pronounced this space you had entered, you understood that the politic of the occupation had entered your own body. This body had no control over the life it was to give. You are a woman in occupied territory. I want to talk about the right to die, the very last right that is left. We steal from you this right to die as part of nature. The heart ceases to beat, the blood stops flowing, the breath halts, the brain fails to function, the neck stiffens, the mouth opens, the skin hardness, its color turns. Lips, finger, and nails fade to gray. Your body turns cold until its temperature equal to that of the room. Death is many smaller deaths. You sit still, a kissless instant that nature grants you. We robbed this moment from you. We stole your life and robbed your death. In movie, a gunshot kills you instantly. In life, it is agony. When a bullet enters the body, ripping through tissue and breaking blood vessel, internal bleeding slowly kills you. The report would say, fatal shooting. A fire is ignited. The heat enters the respiratory system. The gases dry out delicate organs, killing you softly. The reports would say, death in asphyxiation. A building collapses. Walls tumble down. Windows burst. The chest is compressed by heavy structure. As the tide diminishes, the lung will give up. Rib elevation becomes shallower. The diaphragm stops functioning. Thoracic collapse. The report would say death by compression. Number, figures, gender, age, name might be mentioned. Victims are always guilty. Can we go ahead? You okay? It's a bit heavy. And then I have a poet of Elsa Lesker-Schiller. You'll always die to my child. You'll always die again for me. With the parting ears, my child. When leaves disperse and twigs grow thin. With the red roses, you tasted death bitterly. Not a single withering herb was spared you. So I weep sorrowfully forever at night in my heart. Still the lullabies sigh out of me that sobbed you into the death. And my eyes turn no more to the word. The green of leaves hurt them, but the eternal lives in me. My love for you is the image one can make oneself of God. I also saw angels in weeping, in the wind and in the rain. They drifted in the heavenly air. When the moon in bloom resembles your life, my child, and I cannot look when the light-spending butterfly flutters away carefree. I never foreshadowed death, spying around you, my child, and I love the room walls which I paint with your boy's face. The star in this month that falls so many sprinkling into life, drop heavily into my heart. So Elsa Lesker-Schiller lost her child in Berlin, and she had to run away to Israel during the Second War. So this is a song, she kept writing to a song, and one of the things that tormented her that she will not die in the same place he will die. But of course this is any prototype for any refugees who have to separate from their home. So now one more analyze, sorry. Now we will practice sitting. Feel your sitting bone. They are the sharp one in the lower part of your pelvis. They are the anatomical bits that help you to sit. Find a sitting position that is comfortable for you. Sitting is a posture in the middle of the transition from lying to standing, from standing to lying. It is a learned position. Different kind of sitting express different culture. You will adjust your sitting to the chair, to the bed, to the floor. Many objects have been designed to accommodate this position. Chair compete with building, designer compete with architect. Civilization is a position. Civilization is sitting. Think of it. School, sitting. Eating publicly, sitting. Conversing, sitting. Negotiating, sitting. Governing, sitting. Gathering, sitting. Signing contract, sitting. Civilization is a position. Civilization is a sitting. Okay, I'm getting tired of myself. So we can do a turn, and I can show, or I can keep whatever you like. I'm gonna, yeah. Yes, please. So I just escaped this. Yes. And if you like, I can show some images of exhibition or of the performance or of the lessons I used to give in Van Abbe, or just ask me questions. When I'm talking about the position, somebody talk the position and I'm doing it. So I just go through it a little bit quicker. So in what I did in Kassel, I was more animated, the voice of this woman. And in Athens, I can show you later, I used the desk mask in an installation. It was very important to me to work in a very two different vocabularies. So this, of course, makes not so much sense without the text. But as you see, the position are playing a role in the space. And we made posters because we could not use her work, because there's a very high restriction. It's a beautiful work, but museum conditions. So we were allowed to use facsimilia, and then I thought if I can use facsimilia, I'd rather work it as a poster. So we got the permission to make posters from her work. So this is when I read about the hanging. This is the position. You see the paper? I read from the paper. It's more, I don't know, for me, it is very kind of directed at the end, but it's more that the writing for me the writing is very physical in a way. So the writing and that's why I call this work a reading that love a physical act, because the reading is also about, like I say, reading landscape, but also reading bodies. So developing a kind of technique or sensitivity toward different structures. And the writing then is very kind of aware and almost kind of meditating on other bodies, entering other bodies. And the performance is for me much more score-oriented. So I use actually what I show you, the drawing with the hand, as the score, as the map of my floor. And this object, I work often with glass. Maybe I should say it quick, but you see it in most of the image, because where I grew up in the kibbutz Suba, it's one of the only kibbutzes that's still socialistic, because they kind of finance the socialistic communal way of living by glass industry, but it's a weapon glass. So they make all the glass for the checkpoint, for the tanks, for everything that you can imagine. So what for me was quite actually interesting, that this idea of social and communal life can be facilitated by this factory, but also the quality of glass, that it's very fragile, but if you go into this factory, you realize that it's a weapon. Because it's so, I'm quite fascinated with also what glass does to the image, how it reflects glass. And here I quote few artwork. This is Richard Serra, House of Cards. So there's a lot in the script, but also in the making a quotation. So I'm quoting some kind of canonical art, male artwork in the glass, through glass. So this is the House of Cards. And the floor with the three angles is inspired by Carl Andre. I'm looking for photos with the public, because it's all a bit sterile, huh? And the girls that I work with, I always do Feldenkrais with them. So it's very important to me that we do 2 or 1 hour Feldenkrais. So we develop it's a way also to cement a group for me and coming together, but also to care for them. Because I myself also start performance, because I feel I'm often quite abused in this art system, and that bodies are not really welcome. I mean, a lot of, in other practice also, I think, but as a performer, you really continuously encounter a condition that are not hospitality, as I say, as even this room, that are not welcoming. And the stress and all what you have to go through, and there's no place you can rest, but it's a little bit much, sorry. I can't understand you, sorry. No, the art system, as an artist, as a performer, it's like if I make shows and then have performance, there is no way I can somehow combine it. Like if you work with theater, and it's not that it's a practice, I like the theater, but you have a resting room, you have a play, you know, people, you get somehow food. In the art, somehow it doesn't, there is a total eraser of what somebody needs, you know? So you become like objectified. So this is with public. As you see, it's the public become, that's why I also talk about sitting, they are sitting. And this is when I talk about the mountain, the tsuba, climbing up and down. So the text refer, and this is with the sitting, so with framing the public with the, yeah. This is, why did I stop? Actually, I miss it now when I talk to you about my script. I miss writing maybe a little bit, but I just, with Van Abbe, what I thought I can, I wanted actually to develop a school with what happened that I was myself studying Rietveld, and then I started teaching, and then I realized that most of my students, which became really my best friend, cannot stay in Amsterdam because it's just too expensive. And the whole system is not really facilitating work for artists, including myself. So I thought, well, this would be very nice because I started to study Feldenkrais, and Feldenkrais is a lot about learning and how we learn. So I wanted to develop a school with my group of friends. That's what I wanted to do in Van Abbe. That never happened because I didn't know so many people there. So I had to, to start again. But what I wanted in Van Abbe very much is to see how I can use the museum as a site of learning, and to see how I can create, the museum can be accommodated to bodies. So I prepare a whole set of lessons that we were supposed to give once a week, but because of Corona, things changed. But it's just when you are more and more aware to what you need, it's just more and more difficult to be in service for something, for the public, for the institution. That's one thing. The other thing is that I start to get annoyed by public. Sorry, no, it's not like this, but like I think I remember very clearly. I don't know when did I say this story, but I remember really clearly when I was hanging on this rope. Somebody checked, which is fine. It's happened. I'm also bored sometimes. But it was a very difficult position. And I talk about this event about Palestinian women and this was for me such a shock. So I felt suddenly there is something a bit weird, in how much, like, you cannot really guarantee the interest or the care of your public, and you need your public to care for you as a performer. You need them to lift you in a way. That's one thing. The other thing that so most of my performances were very much critical to where I come from. And it was very difficult for me to be in the world without being critical to where I come from. And then I'm a mother now, and some other things happen, and I just realized that I am living here. And actually I want to invest more in something that not in reflecting and looking what went wrong or what is wrong, but really in trying to establish something new. So for me, the Feldenkrais is really a way how to bring people together and how to care for people. So like now I have a show in Migrus Museum, so I tell them, I'm not gonna make the show unless I give you at least 4 months lesson before. Because when you start to work very closely to institution, you realize that it's just a complex system, and it's so segregated, each department, and it's like, it's a mess, believe me, it's a mess. So this was my way, it's also my way to, I don't want to sound pretentious, and I know, but it's a way like a healer, like how can I bring other forces to the museum or to the place I work with? And performing felt for a while like I'm anticipating on the same kind of economics and politics. So I'm trying now to see how can I work with a structure rather than perform in the structure. So, yeah? Okay. Well, I only very lately start showing in Holland. I mean, Van Abbe, it's the first time that I really show an institution here. I showed in an institute in the Pavilion, which was like years ago, in 20 years ago. I never showed in Holland. I had a small gallery, it didn't work out. And it's not that I was not welcoming, but somehow it was easier to show out than here. And the funny thing that with what I do now, it's more easy to make it local, and I would prefer to work more local now. So I'm not so much in fun of this traveling anymore, and of the whole economy of the art structure. I have something that I feel I have to deal with this and to find how I can work with this, but in different ways. Yeah. Questions? Yes, please. Yeah, it's a good question, because what happened, for example, in Van Abbe, that we cemented a group. It was really nice. In the beginning, I had one student, of course. It was a disaster, and I was really devastated. I would go with a train to Van Abbe, and thanks to Jeroen, who keeps saying it's okay, but and I had this idea of school, but nothing happened. And slowly, I had this kind of classical student, which are all middle-class white women, which I learned also to appreciate, because they are really the people who hold the museum in a way, and some people from the museum. What happened very quick when the museum started to realize what I'm doing, that they wanted to instrumentalize it, but not like being so negative, but they thought, if people will come to Yael's show, and she first will do scanning the body, they can look differently. And then I was like, do I like it? So the question I have now is my practice, and it's an open question. It's like, I am very old school in Feldenkrais. I learned 4 years Feldenkrais. My dream is, of course, to take care of people outside of the art world, so one-to-one, because it's also a practice of one-to-one. But this I know will talk longer. But my question, how can I be very ethical to the practice and still do the work in the art? Because I do I do think art is a very beautiful place to connect places and different ideas, but also different bodies. So I'm not sure about it yet, but I'm more interested in educating people, like in general, that the museum really will, like one of the biggest thing with the museum was, Feldenkrais was actually, like a friend told me lately, it was like the Trojan horse, because it's exposed all the things that are impossible in museum. So for example, I can show you, maybe I show you the lessons a bit, so you get a little bit more idea. This is like a proper, yeah. So wait, I show you. So what we did first, just to expand the project in Van Abbe, I had this group, and then we all went together, and I asked people after the experience of 2 years doing with me Feldenkrais to choose a work in the museum they would like that I show in our exhibition. What I realized in Van Abbe that the local people are very attached to the collection, and they're a bit angry because they always have to work in Van Abbe and they never can enjoy Picasso, and it's really interesting to work along with the institution. So we met in the depot and we looked at everybody. I asked people to learn the collection, and everybody were prepared to show the work they would like to show and explain why and how. So this is those, but okay, this I talk about it. So, but what happened what we did with the school is that we tried to create, my first task was to make the museum possible to lie on the floor. This is already a big thing because it's very cold, it's very hard, the museum floor. So already to do this was a huge project. Then we covered the whole wall with textile because the acoustic is bad. Then in order to learn a work, we had to move, for example, I can show you here, I can come back after to this. So we had to move, for example, Zadkin work to the museum, to the school. Now, to move a work from one location to the other location in a museum, you just can't imagine the infrastructure. So that's what I mean about the Troja horse. but it was more about asking the museum to start become a site of learning, to move things, to shift, you know, to organize around it. And so this is for me maybe even more interesting than kind of make the body receptor, because I think that's responsible of each of us, you know. I mean, so I can just show, shall I show this? You want to see this or not? Yeah? So maybe I can first talk about that. So what I did, because each of the group, people choose a part of the collection, and I took on myself to learn the works and try to find lessons that work for this work for me, and to try to show different forces in a work, and that was the whole project actually, that we always look at work very vertically. So when we come to museum, we somehow drop our body elsewhere, and we're going with this body, with this head of us. And I usually suffer from back pain when I go to museum, etc. So the whole idea is that can we be with the work rather than look at it? So first I took really, really long time to look at the work that the group chose, and I tried to see similarity and where can I make commonality between the works. And I talk about different forces, so it can be about hello? Yeah, it can be about direction, about here. You can see actually, here it's so small. You can read, yeah, I don't have to say. So you can see that the big subject is the subject of the lessons, or it was supposed to be of the whole month, but it changed because of Corona. And then this is kind of different research or thing I'm bringing during the lesson. So when people are lying with closed eyes, I'm referring to the work, I'm doing the lesson. I mean, what we did here is a semi, of course. It's not, usually we lie on the floor. And then I'm talking about the works. So you try to imagine the work, but also I have this belief that also work has what to tell us, you know, the work. So it's important to be with the work rather than always just, so these are, I just go through all of them quick. Now you can see how they were in the space. So this is the school, it was the center of the exhibition. And every weekend there was a whole infrastructure we had to build. And also because work, and that was my learning process, work are not allowed to be in the light. So most of artwork just would love to be more in darkness. So also, how long can they be exposed? Because it was very important to me that the school will be with daylight. Sorry, it's a little bit, yeah. So this was a depot. From here, work would have been taken to the school every weekend. This is Fernhout, and I forgot now the name. Sorry. So now Fernhout go back to the location of the exhibition, which is this. So this kind of movement around was extremely kind of, I wouldn't say difficult, but had to plan at least 3 months ahead, or 4 months ahead. So that was also my naivety, that I can just do this, and I can do this, but that doesn't work like this, which actually made the project much more interesting for me.